Thank you so much, Amy, for those wonderful thoughts. As Jason mentioned, I'm a professor in a business school, and I just wanted to start by telling you a little bit about how I got interested in gratitude. So for the past 7 years, I teach a lot of evening MBA students. So what this means is they go to work from early in the morning until 6 p.m., and then from 6 p.m. to 9:30, they're in the classroom. So these are managers. I'm in Seattle, so these are managers at Amazon, at Microsoft, at Boeing. And so I see them coming in right from work, and I started to see some themes and the challenges that they were facing in their work. And so I'd see them come in, and sometimes they'd be really stressed out. And some of the themes were that work was really competitive, not just across organizations, but within the organization. So even with your own team members, people felt like there was a lot of competition. Something that I think was even more important here is that they felt like the work was too transactional. And so maybe you do a favor for a colleague, and then there was an expectation that, okay, well, that means that you need to do a favor for me the next day. So sort of very short-term focused, very transactionally focused. And then the third problem is there's just a lot of distraction. So they're running straight from work. The traffic in Seattle is just as bad as in San Francisco, I think. And then they'd be running in, they'd be so hectic about everything that happened in the day that they had a hard time kind of concentrating and seeing the bigger picture. And the more I thought about it, I thought that gratitude could really be a great solution to these challenges, to shift the workplace from being so competitive to being more collaborative, from being less transactional to being more focused on long-term relationships, and to help move back from all of the distractions of all the things that we're doing all the time, to really kind of see the bigger picture about the role of work in our lives. So for the past few years, I've been studying gratitude in organizations, and what I want to share for you today are just 3 of the rules that I think are helpful to think about for building a more grateful workplace. And so the first rule is to think about building a gratitude habit. So gratitude starts as an emotion, this feeling of appreciation that we have for benefits that we receive. But I think it doesn't end there. And I think that if we think about what we're trying to really build, is we're trying to build a gratitude habit. So we all have emotion habits, by which I mean we all have emotions that we experience in certain contexts. So maybe we tend to feel anxious when we're driving to work. Maybe we tend to feel happy and joyful when we're interacting with our families. Maybe we tend to feel angry when we're interacting with a certain boss or coworker that we don't like very much. And so I think when we're trying to think about our goals, what we're trying to achieve here with gratitude is we're trying to build a gratitude habit where we tend to experience gratitude whenever we go into work. And so what can happen is if we experience gratitude frequently and forcefully at work, then all of a sudden we start becoming more aware of all the opportunities to experience gratitude in our everyday lives at work. Ambiguous events where before we might not have thought about them in terms of gratitude, in terms of other people helping us, all of a sudden those ambiguous events we can interpret through this grateful lens. And if we have this habit of gratitude at work, the other thing that we can do is we start recalling all of those past experiences of gratitude and of appreciation, and that filters into our everyday workplace experiences, and then all of a sudden we start feeling more engaged, more satisfied every day when we go into work because of this gratitude habit. And so as we think about what we're trying to achieve with gratitude at work, I think it's helpful to think about building this gratitude habit, this persistent gratitude. And then if we have a whole organization of people who develop this gratitude habit, who experience this persistent gratitude, then what we can ultimately get to is an organizational culture of gratitude. And so then when a new employee joins the organization, all of a sudden they say, wow, this is a place where people really feel grateful for each other, and there's a lot of appreciation. And it becomes a part of the everyday experience for those newcomers. They get socialized into that organizational culture. And I think that if we can achieve that, that's when we can really start realizing some of these big gains, the positive impact of gratitude in organizations. So rule number 1 is to think about building this gratitude habit. And the second rule, as we try to build that up, is to think about drawing from all of the many sources of gratitude that we can get at work. One of the first things we can do is appreciation programs, which we've already talked about today a little bit. And I think that appreciation programs are valuable because they create a ritual around gratitude, and then again it becomes part of the organizational culture. So then what's happening is employees are saying, oh, I see, people are expressing gratitude in this organization. We have a ritual for it, we have a routine for it. Well, this seems like something that I could do as well, even outside the context of that formal appreciation program. I also think that we can think a little bit more simply about just gratitude expression interventions. So just encouraging employees to express gratitude to each other. Right now, I'm actually running a study with about 1,000 people who work at a factory in China, trying to develop this gratitude intervention. And so we're following them for 1 month, and we're putting some employees into the gratitude condition and some employees in a control condition. To tell you a little bit more about this, this isn't just a factory. This is a factory that makes airline food. And we're not just studying a factory that makes airline food, we're studying the people in the factory that makes airline food that clean up the machinery to make the airline food. So it's a challenging job, but even just in the first week of running this experiment, again with a few hundred employees, I've really been amazed to see the extent to which these employees are able to find things to express gratitude to each other. And so we'll get our sort of formal data in a few weeks. But so far, I've heard that employees are really enjoying this, and it's really providing an opportunity for social connection that they might not otherwise have gone forward with. So this first source of gratitude is others helping us. But the second source of gratitude is actually when we help other people. And I think it's important to recognize this because it's not, immediately intuitive, but there's actually one study that was run in a healthcare setting. And they asked nurses, doctors, what are the things that you feel grateful for at work? And oftentimes the theme of people helping me came up. But one of the biggest ones that came up was, I really feel grateful for my opportunity to make a difference in other people's lives. And so when I see that I'm saving a patient's life, when I see that I'm helping a patient get better, that's really when I feel gratitude for the fact that I have this opportunity to make a difference in the world around me. And so as we try to think about what gratitude's all about, recognizing that it's not just about receiving help, but we also feel gratitude for the fact that work helps us feel more fulfilled, for this opportunity to help others can be really meaningful. One of the ways that we can draw attention to this is what's called a beneficiary contact intervention. So Adam Grant, who's a professor at Wharton in the business school, did a famous study in 2007 where he looked at what happened in a call center. When you have people who are helped by the work of the people in that call center, and you bring them in and have them have a discussion. And so specifically, this was a call center at a college, and so then they had the students who benefited from these scholarships that the call center was calling people to get money for. And those scholarship recipients just said, thank you, I really appreciate everything that you're doing for me. And he found that performance went way up, that persistence of these call center employees went way up. And he didn't study gratitude in that particular study, but I think that we could see gratitude emerging from this type of intervention, because again, what we're doing is we're drawing attention to these positive things that happen at work, this way in which we help others. And so then when employees are thinking holistically about, what do I do at work, they say, well, one of the things I do is I help other people, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity to make a difference in others' lives. One of the ways that we can expand this idea of making a positive impact through work and finding that positive impact as a source of gratitude is also through volunteer programs. So maybe it's hard to find sort of that direct impact that you're having through your work. But there's been a lot of impact on a lot of research on what happens when organizations start volunteer programs that are just in their local communities. And what happens is these volunteer programs all of a sudden again become this source of pride where employees feel like through their work, they're able to make this positive difference in the world around them. And so when run correctly, one of these volunteer programs can be another great way to say, hey, through my work, I'm able to help lots of other people, and I'm really grateful for that possibility. So we can draw gratitude from all of these different sources. We can draw it from the fact that others help us. We can draw it from the fact that we help others. And the third source through which we can draw gratitude in organizations is through the skills that we build at work. So again, we're thinking, what are all the things that are possible for us to feel gratitude for at work? We feel gratitude when other people help us. We feel gratitude when we're able to help others. We also feel gratitude for the skills that we build at work. because work enables us to feel like we're becoming more competent in what we're good at, and we derive all of this pride from what we're good at work. So one of the things that we can do here is focus on developmental feedback. And developmental feedback means that you sit down with an employee and you focus on the skills that they're developing through that work. And so when you help them see all the different ways in which they're becoming more competent and growing in their skills in the workplace, then all of a sudden they say, wow, I'm really grateful for this work, not only for these other reasons, but also because it's helping me to become a more well-rounded individual. I'm developing this new set of skills that I didn't have before. And again, it's getting away from those distractions of day to day, helping employees step back a little bit and seeing these are all of the many benefits that I get through this work, and they're able to see all of the different things that they're grateful for. So developmental feedback can be extremely useful in this context. And then the other thing that can be useful is cross-training. And so sometimes we'll feel like we're doing the exact same thing over and over again at our work. We feel like we're not developing new skills. And so if we want to try to identify that skill development as a source of gratitude, one thing we can do at the organizational level is to try to give our employees opportunities to develop new skills, to go into different divisions within our organizations to take on stretch projects that are maybe a little bit different from what they've done before. And then down the line, when those employees have those opportunities for those new stretch projects, for those new roles, and then they see their ability to grow their competencies in that domain, then again, this becomes another source of gratitude. And so looking at these three areas of gratitude, I hope what you can get from this rule is that, again, gratitude isn't just about others helping us. There are so many good things that we get from our work and can get from our work that if we can highlight all of them and think broadly about all of these possibilities, then all of a sudden the scope of what we can feel in terms of gratitude at work increases pretty dramatically. So the third rule that I wanted to talk about is guarding against negative emotions. And what I'm talking about here in particular is that in our efforts to foster gratitude in organizations, I think there is a risk that it can backfire a little bit, and there's some ways in which we can go wrong. And by identifying those specific other emotions that we can instill in people sort of by accident in our efforts to instill gratitude, if we can identify those a little bit, then we can guard against them. And the first one is envy. So with one of my graduate students, we're running a study right now where there's two participants and they work on an interdependent task, a problem-solving task. And then there's a leader. And then in one condition, the leader expresses appreciation to both of the employees. And in one condition, the leader doesn't express gratitude to either of them. And then in the third condition, while they're both there, the leader expresses gratitude and appreciation to one of the employees, but not the other. And I didn't think that that person would like it very much when they weren't expressed gratitude to, but I was amazed at how much they were upset by this. They became more envious. They never wanted to work with the leader or the other employee again. Not being expressed gratitude to when the other person was way worse than neither person receiving any appreciation. And so just being aware of that risk because appreciation feels so great if you leave somebody out. Kind of like in elementary school, the one person that doesn't get any of the Valentines in their little box in front of the classroom, right? We don't want to be that person. Right? So we want to be aware of envy. And then the second negative emotion we want to be careful about is pride. And so if we're constantly expressing appreciation to our coworkers, saying, hey, look at all these ways you're helping, look at all these skills you're developing, you're so great, et cetera, we do risk this possibility of some employees developing excessive pride, almost to the point of narcissism, in a way that could be damaging to those workplace relationships. And so as we think about developing a culture around gratitude, one of the ways that we can guard against this risk of pride is to constantly emphasize that we're all in this together and that we're an organization, we're interdependent with each other, and we all need each other to succeed. And we want to make sure that we keep this message in place to avoid this type of thing from happening. Because excessive pride and narcissism can be really damaging to an organization, and it can lead to actually a lot of self-focused behavior. And so again, this is a risk where we might have something backfire. The final emotion that we want to guard against is anger. Whenever we institute a new HR practice, a new organizational system where we're trying to impact our employees, we always have this risk that it's going to backfire, that employees are going to react negatively to it. And so if we put a gratitude intervention in place, there's a risk that people might resent it and feel anger. And I think that one of the best ways that we can deal with this is make sure that we're not starting a gratitude initiative sort of in the absence of anything else that's going on in the culture. So if we have huge misalignment in a company, if we have an organization where everybody is extremely competitive with each other, nobody likes working there, the relationships are terrible, and we just kind of try to sprinkle in some gratitude, it's going to come across as insincere. You're going to get negative reactance to that. And so to guard against anger, we need to think holistically about what's the culture we're trying to build here, and how can we make gratitude fit into that overall picture of our organizational culture. And so if you have an organizational culture that emphasizes care and concern for other employees, that emphasizes building positive relationships, that emphasizes interdependencies among all of those employees, then all of a sudden you start a gratitude initiative and it feels sincere. And employees feel that they have the capacity to express gratitude sincerely to their coworkers. And so if we can guard against the envy, guard against the pride, guard against the anger, then I think we're much more likely to be successful in our efforts to institute gratitude in organizations. So that's it for me, and I'll just say thank you.